today's video, we will talk about the transport of carbon dioxide. Now, oxygen is transported with the help of hemoglobin because it is not soluble in water. Carbon dioxide, on the other hand, is highly soluble in water, and therefore the movement of carbon dioxide is much easier than that of oxygen. When we see the distribution of carbon dioxide, around 7% of it is dissolved in the plasma. 23% of carbon dioxide binds to hemoglobin as carb-amino hemoglobin, and 70% of it is present in plasma in the form of bicarbonates. The carb-amino hemoglobin is a compound which is represented as HbNH COOH. This is carb-amino hemoglobin. And this binding of hemoglobin to carbon dioxide is related to the partial pressure of carbon dioxide as well as oxygen. Let us try and understand how. In the tissues, due to catabolic activities, the concentration or the partial pressure of carbon dioxide is high as compared to the partial pressure of oxygen, and as a result, more amount of carbon dioxide molecules are available for binding, and they will bind more easily with the hemoglobin. Over here, the concentration of oxygen is low in tissues because of the catabolic activities. The oxygen is being utilized for the breaking of the food particles or the complex substances or for various metabolic activities and releasing carbon dioxide. So the partial pressure of carbon dioxide will be more in the case of tissues, and therefore more binding will happen. Now, when we compare it with alveoli, the alveoli have low partial pressure of carbon dioxide and they have high partial pressure of oxygen. Now, it is here the blood carrying the carb-amino hemoglobin reaches over there, and the dissociation of this compound, that is carb-amino hemoglobin, takes place, releasing carbon dioxide and freeing the hemoglobin. Now, the RBCs, that is the red blood corpuscles, which are found in the blood, they have very high concentration of an enzyme called as carbonic anhydrase. This carbonic anhydrase enzyme is responsible for the formation of the carbonic acid in the plasma. Now, what is happening over here? The carbon dioxide, most of the carbon dioxide that is present in the plasma, it reacts with water in presence of carbonic anhydrase enzyme. This enzyme is the fastest enzyme. It has a very rapid reaction, and due to the presence of carbonic anhydrase, which is which is considered to be the fastest enzyme, and this forms the carbonic acid. Now, the carbonic acid which is being formed over here, the reaction can take place in both ways. Now, what happens over there in the tissues? This carbonic acid is present over there where the concentration of PCO2 is high and PO2, partial pressure of oxygen, is low. So what happens? The carbon dioxide dissolves in water in the presence of carbonic anhydrase, forming the carbonic acid. Now the concentration of carbonic acid does not increases in the blood. The reason being it is checked by the presence of sodium. In the tissues also, in the alveoli, where the partial pressure of carbon dioxide is low, the reaction takes place in opposite direction. So over here you can see the reaction is taking place in opposite direction, and as a result the formation of carbon dioxide and water is happening. The carbon dioxide is trapped as bicarbonate, that is in the form in the tissues it is present in the form of bicarbonates, and in the alveoli carbon dioxide is present as carbon dioxide and is expelled out of the body through expiration. It is expected, or it is estimated, that about 100 ml of deoxygenated blood carries approximately 4 ml of carbon dioxide in the alveoli. Now when we are talking of the effect of partial pressure of carbon dioxide and oxygen, because it affects the partial pressure of carbon dioxide and the partial pressure of oxygen affects the binding of carbon dioxide to hemoglobin, there is a effect which is known as Haldane effect. Haldane effect is named after the scientists, and Haldane effect we know that carbon dioxide's ability to bind with hemoglobin is affected by the amount of oxygen which is bound to the hemoglobin. So that means if less oxygen is available and more carbon dioxide is there, the binding between hemoglobin and carbon dioxide will be more, and vice versa. So the smaller the amount of oxygen bound to hemoglobin, the higher is the amount of carbon dioxide that can bind to hemoglobin and vice versa. So this effect is known as Haldane effect. If the PCO2, if we talk of oxygen, if it is PO2 is low, that means less of oxygen molecules which are binding the hemoglobin, then chances of CO2 binding to hemoglobin will be high, and vice versa. So this effect is named after the scientist and is known as Haldane effect.